Hey, hello. It's been a minute. Life's been weird. I got the cocoa, as we all know from I think my second to last vlog. And then lots of weird life stuff that's just been happening. It's just been like when I get home from work, I'm just like, do I want to relax? Do I want to be a vegetable? And then the book from my last reading vlog has sent me in such a bad reading slump that I haven't been able to pick up a book, like, at all. I tried rereading The Bone Witch in hopes that maybe I'll be able to get through the series and, like, you know, kick that up. Didn't even get to do the first chunk. So now I'm starting a different book, and then I'll just do, like, a summer, May wrap-up situation and hope for the better. I'm here with a review that I've been meaning to film and post for a hot minute. But as I just explained, life has been weird. It's just been so weird that I haven't had the energy to film anything. That book is actually a new release. It came out, I think, in June 6th, or like either the last leg of May or the beginning leg of June. One of the two. But it is like an academic high fantasy, and that is To Shape a Dragon's Breath. I have a ton of great things to say about this book. I received an arc of this, and I had like read it, and I need to catch up on all of my reviews as well, because I am behind on that, and I'm sure my NetGalley percentage looks great right now. But enough of that. Let's get into the book, because it's a new favorite, and I've been wanting to get a copy of it in my shelves, but I don't know if my Barnes & Noble just sucks. Something happened with Barnes & Noble. It's just not a good time right now. But have a lot of good things to say, so just get into the video. I would love to have a cover of this book in my hands, but like I said, Barnes & Noble is probably just really sucky right now because the stock always says out of stock. So someone's lying. Alright, moving on. Let's start with the synopsis of the book. Now this is a YA, like I said, like almost dark academia high fantasy, which is just like a perfect mix of like mystery and intrigue and just like lore, which apparently was right up my alley when I read the book at the time, so why it's a new favorite. The synopsis is, in the remote island of Mascopag, I said that right, in Mascopag, dragons have long thought to be extinct due to the great, I think, burning or the great dying of the dragons due to colonization. That is until one year young Anekus finds an abandoned dragon egg and hatches it, just now becoming her like colony's first, her tribe, I guess, her family's, we'll say families, her family's first Nempeshwe in what is probably decades and almost centuries. Now, in order to avoid bringing danger and potential war to the shores of Mascopag, due to the fact that she is currently carrying she is now an Nempeshwit, or in the colonized terms, a dragon rider, that the two are not synonymous, she then decides to go to school in the Vakoshkish, I think is the place that it's called, or the English. So the English we haven't heard of yet, the Vakoshkish of like their high school, their like amazing school where they teach young people to become dragon riders. And she goes to this place with the expectation to learn the things that she needs to learn to be able to take these resources back to her family when she graduates, to help bring about more resources and really help their family thrive in this new world where they now have a dragon, and the concept of shaping a dragon's breath is something magical and something that can literally change the trajectory of her family's life. Now, obviously, just from the words colonialism that I threw in there, the trigger warnings for this book are colonialism, racism, some homophobia, bigotry, ableism, and sexism. Because you cannot write a book about colonization and not discuss the major impacts that it has had on the other things in society, such as those. Moving on to my first thoughts of the book, I am not gonna lie. I went into this book with zero thoughts. The head was empty, which I think I need to start doing when it comes to books more often. I saw this in NetGalley, I believe, and I thought that the cover looked absolutely phenomenal. I was like, the shapes, the color of it, the title was just pulling me in, and I just had like zero thoughts when I requested it, and I had zero thoughts when I started reading it when I went into the book. I finally like read the summary when I started reading the first couple pages and was like, maybe I should have read the summary first because I don't know what's going on. I literally had no other impressions. I have not heard of this book on any of like the Bookstagram, when I am on Bookstagram, the book talk, or the book Twitter aspect of any of this. I had not seen this on anything, so I was really intrigued to see what my thoughts were going to be, as I had not nary a friend, not a single friend, who had read or discussed or even mentioned being interested in the book at all. Moving on to the things I did not like about this book, the bad things, as I have it titled in my notion. Now, since this is like an academic focused book, it's very much like kid finds out she should attend school, kid attends said school, and kid goes to said classes. It is very true to like the concept of like a high fantasy academic novel, meaning it dragged. The first chunk of this book, I would say, was just mainly set up. It was just really laying down the foundation for the characters and laying down the foundation of the inevitable tension that would happen between the fact that we got a brown kid. Well, there are two brown kids, but we got the brownest of brown kids, as I'll explain later. Kind of going into this school where people think that brown kids should not belong, let alone a girl brown kid. So it definitely for sure kind of dragged a little bit. I was able to kind of just like push through it because I do like a nice character-centered book. I love a book where we get to discuss characters and I get to learn about lore. As we all have learned, I'm a big lore girly. So I love the lore, I love the characters, I love learning everything I could about this book. Which it allowed me to, but if that's not your thing, that's probably something that's gonna probably make the book less for you, if that makes sense. Reduce your enjoyment is what I'm trying to say, because it did drag. It was a little slow. It's a lot of setup. The entire first book is a setup, as this book is part of a series, it looks like, or a duology at least. It is also, one of the things I considered things I was not a huge fan of was that this book, or you might not be a huge fan of, depending on you, is that this book is also very heavy on politics. It's very much small child goes into the snake's den, indigenous child goes into the snake's den and has to play the standard and has to pretend to actually care about the societal things that are being pushed upon her for the sake of just surviving, even though she could not care. So if that's something that might slow you down or might really hinder your ability to enjoy the book, or maybe it's just not your vibe at all, probably should steer away from this book. Like I said, while politics aren't my favorite thing in the book, it is kind of like an aspect, a portion, a part I must endure for things such as high fantasy, especially ones that do deal with colonialism, that do deal with colorism, all that stuff. It's just something that kind of has to happen in high fantasy books, I would say, especially ones that deal with more bigger issues. So it's something you just kind of have to push through, but it didn't hinder my personal enjoyment of the book, especially toward the end of the book. I think everything kind of came together. But I think while you're reading it, it is definitely one of those moments where you're just kind of dragging your feet through it, hoping that maybe, just maybe, you'll get by. But if you're into the lore and the characters, the politics and the kind of the slow aspects of the book, definitely speed by pretty quickly. So take those into consideration. Moving on to the good things I did like about this book, I really enjoyed how immersive this book was. Every country in of itself felt like they each had a stake in the fact that there's a young girl who is now who has had a part, who is now part of the Dragon Riders and Peshwits in her native language. I like the fact that they all felt independent. It wasn't oh, the English are English with an A, not E, English, like an anglerfish. The English had all these things that were going on happening that is just going to be a bigger part of the second book when that comes out. And it felt even though we didn't see any English people on the page, they were going to be a portion that were going to have some stakes in the novel itself. The Vakoshkish felt like their own society, felt super full of societal structure and full of development, as well as the indigenous tribe, the Muskopogs, or the island of Muskopog, and the other island whose name I'm forgetting. but it all felt like they all kind of had a stake and a part in the history of the world, rather than it just being introduced and hope for the best kind of situation. I really did enjoy that part of the novel, that it was just, if everything felt so real and felt so grounded in in like reality, in a real portion of this of life that we kind of can see today, which kind of helped get through the dragging and the, you know, the racism and the colonialism and the erasure of history. I adored Anekus as a character. I think it's been a long time since I've read a character who is so sure of herself, in the sense that we didn't need to have this whole struggle of her like coming into this world, this unknown world, with a desperation to fit in, only then to accept herself. Anekus felt like she accepted herself in her entirety. She loved her culture, she loved the people she came from, she didn't want to grow and become bigger. She just wanted to learn from the things she needed to go from, and then go home and help family. That's all she wanted to do. She didn't want anything else. Like, to have a character that is so grounded in and so strong-willed about her culture, her people, her practices, everything about her just felt so whole, and it was so enlightening to see in a YA character. Just because, like I said, I feel like sometimes like YA is like you have the coming of age, the story where you fill the shoes. And I think to have her on such a solid plot of land, so to speak, to like grow from, gives her so much more room to grow in the following books, and then also just gives her this kind of like breath of fresh air, that I get to see this character become more. I get to see her go from this sure of herself character, and maybe we'll see her struggling with more insecurities as the series goes on, but as of right now, her like assuredness of herself, the way that she went about the world in this book, was like something that I desperately needed to see from a character, especially from a brown character and like a queer character. To see her just be so strong and so like digging her heels in the ground about like, no, there's nothing wrong with my culture, there's nothing wrong with my people, there's nothing wrong with my practices, it's just how we do things, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's you guys that are putting something on my people that's making it seem wrong, but it's not wrong. We're two different people, nothing wrong with either, but there's something a little wrong with yours. Just that kind of thing. There were moments because of this where she felt a little flat to me, but at the same time, I think this was a really good beginning step to show Anekus as a character and how she could grow from being already a solid person in this series. I'm very excited to see where she develops, and I really want to, like, I just loved seeing this character who we didn't have to see like force herself to fit in, didn't have to see her really struggle with like her identity. She like knows who she is, and I think to have that as a stepping point for a character is going to be a beautiful series, because it's just perfect. I loved her so much. I want to protect her with all my life. I want her to just be perfect. She's just perfect, okay? Nothing can go wrong with this small child. If something happens to this small child, I will light the room on fire. I really enjoyed each side character that we got to see. We got to see them really kind of, they're all very much developed. They're all very they're all separate as well. They don't seem like the kind of, like at the beginning, some of them did blend a little bit, just because it was like a lot of names thrown at you and a lot of like random societal things that were thrown at you with the names. But after a minute of like getting the hang of who was who, you really got to see the characters and got to see like their motivations, their values, and how they're affected by the socialism, the sexism, the racism, the ableism of this country. And just to see like Aneko's kind of fight against that, it was a really nice juxtaposition of those characters and the way that they kind of like started to adjust and grow themselves because of Aneko's and who she was as a person and how she influenced them. It was a really nice thing to see that while she was this steady column, this steady pillar, everyone else got to grow with her and become something like they get to find their footing because she's already so solid, and it's such an interesting thing to see. The last thing that I really enjoyed too were the dragons. I really like the take on the dragons and the dragon lore itself. We get to see that a dragon's breath isn't just fire, but it's more so like almost, I don't want to say alchemy. What is that word, Sherman? I think it's alchemy. Where like you can change different elements into different things, like change the elements into another element almost, on top of like the things that we've learned. And the way that she described the dragons and how like each region has their own like beautiful type of dragon, like the feathers are different, the scales are different, the sizing, the temperaments. And I just like dragons. I just like seeing that like personality and like the differences between each dragon and all those things. I think each dragon was very distinctive, and I liked seeing people talk about the dragons like, oh, is that from so and so region? You know, they have they're typically like this icy color, or their feathers typically sit a little like higher on the head or something, like a rooster, I don't know. Or they have feathers on their tails. They're typically this. It was really interesting to see that lore and the development that she took with it. I really enjoyed it. Moving on to my overall thoughts and my recommendation. This was a 5 out of 5 stars for me. It's definitely going to place in my top 10 of 2023 books of the year. It's going to be an interesting thing to see where it's placing, considering I've been in a reading slump since May. I really cannot wait to see what happens with Anekus and the rest of the characters throughout the series. I don't know when the second book is coming out. I think I'm just gonna like let it surprise me, like a panda, like a red panda, if you guys know what I'm talking about. I think I'm just gonna wait for that because I don't want to like count down to the days quite yet, because I don't know when it's gonna get released, because this book was literally just released. When I finished the book, I realized that this book had a lot of things that I had been missing in fantasy recently, and I don't know like what it is exactly, if it was like the lore aspect or the fact that Anekus is such a solid character to have everyone kind of grow around, but I just felt like this was something that I had been missing in a long time in fantasy. Like even in those lower portions, the politics that I'm not always super interested in, I was very invested with how the book was written and how the book was developed from beginning to end. I just wanted to keep reading. I didn't want to put it down. It was just so good, and I absolutely adored this book. I desperately wanted Anekus to win. I wanted her to get everything she wanted in life and more, and I found myself tearing up with the book and how like the sense of hope and maybe victory that was left with it, while also knowing that there's like more obstacles to come, was just like a really great thing to read in a book. I don't know, it's weird. I would highly recommend this book if you guys are looking for like a really good high fantasy and like an academic setting on top of that as well. I think the slow pace is something to get over, but at the end of the day, like with how the characters are developed and how everything kind of moves forward, I think you'll really enjoy this book, and I cannot wait to see what Monique Goosegill has in store for the rest of the series, or for the rest of her books that she is planning on releasing. I think I'm sold. I think there'll be an auto by author. No matter what, it'll be a good time. I'll have fun. But that is it for my review of To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monique Goosegill. Let me know in the comments what you guys think down below. I really, like I said, I just adored this book with all of my heart, and I need a copy of it. I just need my Barnes & Noble to get copies of it. So if you guys like this video, let me know in the comments. Let me know any reviews you want me to do. And until next time, stay safe, subscribe, like, and comment as well. Bye.